Hey everyone, it's me, Jen, and I'm nothing if not intense. It's Sunday, November 18th, Spotlight, Mary Lou Danley. We are going to do the Danley deep dive. I think it's important to really go through the timeline and look at what evidence is there and what conclusion that evidence will bring us to. It was just a few months ago, more like 9 months ago, when I uploaded my first video about Mary Lou Danley and my assertion that she was indeed in Las Vegas on October 1st. Very important. So I've been beating this drum for more than 9 months. I've taken a lot of shit for it. I've been called probably every name in the book by the narrative huggers or narrative nutters, whatever you want to call them. And so, yeah, that was hard to handle because this isn't my thing and this was never gonna be my thing to do YouTube videos. So each video to me is like my little baby and I want to love it and take care of it and I don't want anybody to hurt it, and because I put so much time into it, and with my technological issues, any video I do is going to take twice as long as somebody else that would do it if they had decent equipment. So it is laborious to say the least. Oh geez, I just lost my train of thought. But what we need to be thinking about as we go on this journey, as we're diving through this Mary Lou Danley stuff, is the theory of the big lie. The theory of the big lie, you say the most outrageous thing, but if you repeat it often enough, most will come to believe you. And that's exactly what they did with Mary Lou Danley. I mean, they had basically put it out there that they had located her. The news, it went over the wires that they had her in custody. And we'll get there. But then to flip the script and be like, oh, she was out of the country. She wasn't there. He used some of her ID to check into a hotel room. That's why her name, that's why that player's card was there and her name came up. That's the only reason, is because he used some of her ID to check into room 134. That's what they have beaten into us for over a year now. Anytime it comes up, nope, she was out of the country. She was out of the country. She was out of the country. So obviously people are going to think she was out of the country. And also, like I've said before, they did a wonderful job as painting her almost as a victim of this big guy, and she's this petite little grandma who wouldn't hurt a fly, and oh, he mistreated her and talked down to her and berated her at Starbucks and all that bullshit. I do not believe that for a minute. She was no wallflower for sure. She was a feisty little Filipino bitch is what she was. And she knew what she was doing. She was worldly in ways, I would say. So it was not like she was some sweet, innocent little old grandma who was defenseless and was living with this person who was treating her very badly. Now, was the relationship more of a business relationship or a companionship? Maybe that could have been the case, but to say that he was in total control and berated her and basically was mentally abusive to her, I think is a bunch of crap. Because by painting her as a victim, that would only make it harder for us to believe the truth that she actually was in Las Vegas and had involvement in this event whatever it may be. I'm not saying she was a shooter by any means, but I'm not ruling that out either. Because honestly, with that, I just don't know. What I do know, what I've never wavered from since February 10th when I uploaded my first video about Mary Lou Danley, was that she was in Las Vegas that night. That's it. I mean, I would bet my life on it without flinching. She was there. So some people who I don't understand their mindset are like, well, what does that matter? What does that matter? It's huge, because she is one of the biggest lies in this shithole of lies. She is one of the biggest ones. So in my mind, it's very important to know, A, that she was there, and B, what her involvement was, and C, what did she know, and D, does she have hard drives, and, E, F, G, H, I, on and on and on. So she's very central to this whole investigation, in my mind. I'm not a professional, as we know, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to flip and figure that one out. I'm gonna start kind of at the end, because to me this article speaks volumes. Philippine immigration mom on arrival of Las Vegas shooter's female companion. Manila Times, October 3rd, 2017. And what just happened? Oh, I'm on the wrong thing. I'm not actually on the article. One moment. And I've debated about, typically I would just shut this one down, upload, download, blah, 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 upload. But you might see my little controls for the recording thing, because time-wise, it just takes too long to just stop every time I need to go to a different web page or whatever. So I do apologize, because that bothers me, seeing those controls. I don't like that. Maybe there's a way I can get rid of them when I go to edit. I will check that out. But if not, you're going to have to see this little do-do-do-do thing. It's stupid. Okay, this is where I wanted to be. Philippine immigration mom on arrival of Las Vegas shooter's female companion. The Manila Times, October 3rd, 2017. Now, the Manila Times is the oldest English language newspaper in the Philippines, founded in 1898. So this newspaper has been around a very long time. So the article goes on to say, the Bureau of Immigration, the BI, neither confirmed nor denied reports that the female companion of Las Vegas shooter was in the Philippines. Now, this... Oh, my Lanta. This next sentence is the one that just hits home for me. Speculations were rife that Mary Lou Danley arrived in the country on Monday, after Stephen Paddock gunned down more than 50 people and injured 500 on Sunday at the Las Vegas Strip. So let's hear that again. Speculations were rife that Mary Lou Danley arrived in the country on Monday, after the shooting. After the shooting. Speculations were rife. Based on reports, Mary Lou Danley is not a suspect and appears to have been cleared by the police. Well, imagine that, yes. On October 2nd, which was that Monday, all of a sudden she was cleared as a suspect, not a person of interest, nothing. And I know why. Because, as we read, we are not inclined to release any information at this time, the information being confidential, because she was quote-unquote cleared as a suspect. They were then not obligated to release any information or any information that would go against what they started pushing as their narrative. that she was out of the country, because if the BI over there had to release that information, they would have had to release that no, she was not in the Philippines at that time. So, let's make that information go away or be omitted, because if you tell us that you don't have to tell anything if she's cleared as a suspect, then guess what? Oh, she's cleared as a suspect. So there you go. They never confirmed that she was in the Philippines. Honest to God, it was never confirmed by the Philippine Immigration Bureau. They said that they would cooperate, blah, blah, blah. Airport sources said Danley arrived in September in Manila from Las Vegas. I believe that was on the 15th. She left the country for Hong Kong, which I believe was on September 22nd, and returned to Manila after 3 days, which would have been September 25th. And that's where everything stops. Yes, she returned to the Philippines on the 25th. But did she then leave the Philippines and fly back to the U.S. by the 28th? That's what I believe. But they couldn't say anything beyond the 25th when she got back to the Philippines, because it would have been she then left the country. And no, we don't want that, because that doesn't follow the narrative, people. So it gets really, really, it just gets really ugly. I mean, they're basically lying by omission. They're not straight up lying because they didn't confirm or deny it. They didn't say one way or another, and left it open-ended as far as she got back to the Philippines on the 25th from Manila. Or, excuse me, from Hong Kong. So, the next thing we're going to look at is when she starts to come on the radar in the U.S. in the investigation, or what we can see as a part of the investigation. But quickly, ultimately, that article that we just went through, that's where I want to take you. I want to take you to that end point on October 3rd, when speculations were rife in the Philippines that she had arrived there on Monday after the shooting versus being there during the time of the shooting. That's what I'm shooting for, and that's the timeline that we're going to be going through. And I'm hoping to do it in a way that's not too boring, because again, I'm not all the bells and whistles, so I do apologize, but there's just so many things. There's going to be so much scanner traffic, a lot of PDFs, video. It runs the gamut. So I hope I can pull it all together in a fashion that will let you be able to decide one way or another at the end of it if those people in the Philippines were correct in their speculation. That's my end goal. So let's take a look at this. It's just some PDFs that I pulled together, did some screenshots, and tried to put it all together in one place to make it easier for myself. And if I can get through this without all this editing shit popping up, it'll be a miracle. But the things I go through. So let's see. On September 25th, per the LVMPD prelim report, Paddock checks in on September 25th to 32135 under his name. He then books the connecting room 32134 for September 29th through the 2nd. When Paddock checked in to 32134 on September 29th, he did so under his girlfriend Danley's name. So in the prelim report, they thought it important enough to let us know under September 25th that on the 29th, when he checked into 32-134, he used Danley's name. However, when we look at the final report at the same day, September 25th, they back off of that Mary Lou Danley thing somewhat. Again, he checks in on the 25th at 32-135 under his name, and then it just tells us that he booked the connecting room 32-134 for the 29th through the 2nd. No mention of Mary Lou. So, I don't know. They just backed off of that a bit. Now, also on the 25th, in the first warrants that were released, the FBI ones, it was like 400 and some pages, I believe. Excuse me. They were looking at two email accounts, two target accounts. So target number one was Paddock's Central Park at live.com account, and target 2 account was Mary Lou Rose's at live.com account. And what it tells us was on the 25th, there was an email exchanged between those two email accounts discussing a wire transfer of funds, which was to be sent by Stephen Paddock to Mary Lou Danley. It is unclear what the purpose of the wire transfer was, which, I don't know. They probably were discussing it in the email, but maybe they weren't. Then it goes on to say that Mary Lou Danley is known to have been in the Philippines at that time. I believe she was on the 25th. So the wire transfer, as far as I know, didn't take place on the 25th. They were just discussing it on the 25th through email. If we go to the 26th, that's when it tells us that he did make a wire transfer in Mesquite of $50,000 from his Wells Fargo account to an account in the Philippines. They don't say Mary Lou Danley's account in the Philippines. They just say an account in the Philippines. So they talked about it. They discussed it through email on the 25th, and then on the 26th, that transfer takes place. The next time we really see her in the sequence of events is then on the 25th. Now, for me, September 28th. For me, the 28th is critical. There was a lot going on the 28th. Basically, Paddock spent the whole day in Mesquite before going back to Mandalay Bay. He did do another he did another transfer of $50,000 at Wells Fargo to a bank in the Philippines. I don't believe Mary Lou Danley was in the Philippines at that time. But again, that other transfer didn't necessarily go into quote-unquote her account. So it also says that's the day that he purchased that .308 bolt action. He went to the gun range, blah, 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 blah. Then he leaves and he arrives back at Mandalay Bay at about 9:46 p.m. that night on September 28th. Pulls into the valet. We have that valet coverage. We have that CCTV coverage from the 28th when he pulls into the valet. And guess who pulls in right behind him? I believe it's Mary Lou Danley. And I think that she left the Philippines sometime after the 25th and arrived back in the States and was at the house in Mesquite on the 28th. And when it was time to go back to Mandalay Bay, Steve took off and she got in her vehicle and was right behind him and followed him right into the valet at Mandalay Bay. Now, I know a lot of people don't believe that that's her in the valet at Mandalay Bay on the 28th, but I stand by that because I know I spoke about it before in, I don't know, I did a video about it and it was in there. Um, it makes sense. It at a press conference, even Joe Lombardo says, "Oh, well, on the 28th, Mary Lou Danley was added to his room, added basically as a registered guest to his room." But he's trying to, that's when he was fighting the whole, why did he tell, he told us for how many days that Paddock checked in on the 28th versus the 25th. So when he was trying to backtrack and cover his lie about the 28th, that's when he let it slip that she was added to that room on the 28th. And, ooh, maybe he's confused and blah, blah, blah. No, he's just fucking lying, pardon my French. But so he lets that slip, and I'll share that video with you. And then the clincher for me is the lock interrogation report for the 28th that to me just says, yeah, there were two people that went into that room in close proximity. And Mary Lou Danley left the valet at about 9:48. Paddock wasn't far behind her at about almost 10 o'clock on the dot. She gets the door, somebody accesses the door at 9:53. So then at about, oh gosh, I don't have it. Well, I have it right here. Duh. Then the door is opened. So I believe Danley gets to the room at 9:53, and then at 10:02, the door's opened from the inside, and then the door's closed. 10:02 is when Paddock gets up to the room, I believe. Now, it's going to take him longer because he's using the service elevator with the luggage cart. So it's not like he's using the guest elevator that's going to come out in that center core. He's got to hoof it a ways to get down to that room. So it's going to take a little bit longer for him to get to the room. Plus, he left about a minute after her. But to me, that's the clincher. I mean, he pulls up, she pulls up. She leaves the valet area, and then a minute or so later, he leaves the valet area. Somebody accesses that door, closes it, and then opens it from the inside 9 minutes later. And that's for Paddock. So, to me, it's like a no-brainer. She got to the Mandalay Bay on 9:28. Plain and simple. I mean, she was in Mesquite. Steve's in Mesquite. They're heading back to Mandalay Bay. He gets in his van. She gets in her Tucson, and she follows him back to Mandalay Bay, and they pull into the valet within seconds of each other. It's all right there on camera. So we're going to take a quick look at that. Oh, really? So this is the 28th. It's like 9:47. There's Paddock. He pulls in. And then, dun dun dun, I say that's Mary Lou Danley. Pulls in right after him. With her Jimmy leg. I haven't sprayed the arm. What? And there she goes. So it's still 9:48, well, almost 9:49. So 4 minutes for her to get to the room, I think would be reasonable to get up to 32,135. And then it's going to take Paddock longer because he uses the freight elevators, and then it's a much longer hike. A quick recheck of the lock interrogation report seems to support my theory that Mary Lou Danley arrived. She went up, she got up to the room first. The door accepted the key card, opens the door 9:53, closes the door. Closes the door at 9:55. 9 minutes after she arrived up there, the doors open from the inside, and then the doors closed. I believe that is Paddock arriving up there on the 32nd floor. Now let's take a listen to Sheriff Joe and what he can tell us about 32,135 on September 28th.
So the 25th versus the 28th. This was not breaking news. No matter who believed it to be so in this forum, we were aware of the discrepancy of the 28th versus the 25th in the early parts of this investigation. What we weren't aware of is why the date of the 28th was utilized in the early portion of this, as I was provided this information as part of the person registered in the suspect's room. We have come to learn the suspect did occupy the room on the 25th, and the situation on how the room was compensated or paperwork had changed, and the name as part of the registration had changed on the 28th to include Mary Lou Danley. So that was the confusion associated with that.
To get to the room once they do get up to that floor. Sheriff Joe, what did you just say? What did you say? The name as part of the registration had changed on the 28th to include a who? One Miss Mary Lou Danley? Well, I'll be. That's really weird because supposedly she wasn't in Vegas. She was in the Philippines. So I wonder why Paddock would put her name on 32,135. I mean, we're not even talking about 32,134 because he doesn't have that room yet. So we're talking 32,135. Why would he do that? Let me think. Man, this is a tough one. Could it be because that's when she arrived? She arrived on September 28th. We see her pull into the valet about 10-15 seconds behind Stephen Paddock. Gets out of her vehicle. Jimmy legs it in to Mandalay Bay and goes up to 32,135. She uses a key card, gets in, waits for Paddock, and opens the door from the inside when he gets there after he takes the service elevators and the walk and with the luggage cart and all that stuff. 2 + 2 = 4. However, I know there are some people out there that will never believe that she was in Vegas. And that's okay. And that's going to be on them. But, gee, I wish they'd hop on their pet unicorn right over to the end of the rainbow where that pot of gold is that they found and throw some of that shit in my PayPal account. Because I could use the boost right now. Not even joking. And once they're done doing that, they'll probably want to take themselves out to lunch or dinner and order and eat 2 entrees all by themselves. And then to quench their thirst, they'll probably be drinking some more of that Kool-Aid. Sorry. I'm so sorry. That was kind of snarky, but that's the way I feel because I've taken so much crap over my stance on Mary Lou Danley and the validation once we finally started getting this BWC from the 3 to 4:30 a.m. range has been like a gift from baby Jesus for me. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this. I'm looking forward to our next diving excursion. And you guys know what to do. Click, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until we dive again, NINI is out.